Welcome to your summit. Your wait is over. Postmenopausal women scaling back. My
Mhm.
name is Jillian Teta, and I gathered together several experts who can help us in understanding what we can do to get rid of the weight that we've gained during menopause and give you some really wonderful practical things that you can do. And so today I'm talking with Jillian Teta. She is a naturopathic doctor, and she specializes in digestive health and hormones. And hi, Jillian. Thanks for joining us today.
Hi, Jean. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it so much. I'm thrilled to be here.
Absolutely. I know you have a lot of really wonderful stuff to share with us about what we can do. And so why don't you start with some of the most important things that, or issues that we need to address during this class.
Yes, that's wonderful. So first, I think the most important thing to say in our conversation is that any woman who has the privilege of living long enough or has to make a choice to save her life or improve her health is going to end up at menopause, whether we go into it naturally or surgically or chemically. Again, anyone who's going to live long enough is going to get here. So I think normalizing the process, creating a camaraderie, like we're all in this together, no matter what our ages or our status is, I think that that's really, really important. So I want to just kind of lay that on the line, and I'm thrilled to be here. I'm thrilled that everyone else is here. And so what I'd like to talk about today is a couple things that I think are important and are often overlooked in the mainstream / conventional conversation about menopause. We tend to focus exclusively on estrogen and progesterone in the menopause conversation without really understanding or talking about the impacts that those hormones have on the entire system and the relationship that those hormones have with other very, very crucial hormones, particularly in the sense of body composition. So today, I want to do a couple things. We're going to talk about the relationship between estrogen and insulin, and then we're going to talk about the relationship between progesterone and cortisol, because insulin and cortisol both are very powerful in body composition, stress response, and those types of things. And then, because I love digestive health, we're going to talk a little bit about the microbiome and the gut and pooping and all of those types of things. So the first thing that I think we can lead with is the fact that the very act of going through menopause puts us women in a metabolic and physiologic state that is more resistant to insulin and more reactive to stress. And this in turn has ripple down effects which make us irritable, make us sort of watch our waistline disappearing and our muscle disappearing with the addition of belly fat, hot flushes, all of these types of things. So when I say that going through menopause makes us more insulin resistant, what do I mean? So now we're going to talk about the relationship between estrogen, a very famous lady hormone. It's responsible for making the breasts full and the hips full and the thighs full, helps give us that hourglass shape, and the relationship it has with insulin. Now, insulin is a hormone that takes sugar out of the blood and it puts it into the cells for energy, right? And estrogen helps keep us sensitive, aka responsive to insulin. So when we have enough estrogen, our insulin response is good or better than a woman who has low estrogen. It helps us utilize sugar better. So the very act of us going through menopause means that we are losing some of our ability to have excellent insulin sensitivity and response. Okay, so I want to be very clear about this. So what this means is that on that spectrum of good insulin control and then sort of insulin resistance, the very act of going through menopause puts us closer towards insulin resistance, closer towards that pre-diabetic spectrum. It's not saying we're now pre-diabetic, it's just moving us a little closer in that direction. It's not fair, but what it means is that we are literally unable to tolerate with good sugar control and good insulin control, the amount of carbohydrates that we could even 6 months prior, 3 months prior. This, again, is just a biochemical, physiological fact, and it stinks, but it's something that happens to us all. So, did you have a question or no? Okay. No, I know, because everyone's like, oh, that's terrible. Because what women will say when they come in, they'll say, I haven't changed my diet at all. I haven't done anything different. I haven't changed my diet. I haven't changed my exercise, but I'm gaining fat around my middle like crazy. And this is in part why, because we're moving towards that insulin resistance. So the question then becomes, well, what do we do about it? What can we do about improving our insulin sensitivity? And what I begin to coach women on is first, so we have to like inject a little bit of like paying attention into what we're doing. We have to take stock of the types of foods that we're eating and the amount of carbohydrates that we are eating, because in most situations, those carbohydrates are going to have to be reduced. The amount that they have to be reduced is going to vary person to person, okay? We use what we call a carb tipping point, which is just a term to describe the amount of carbohydrates that we need to have good energy for our workouts, good energy for our day, but not so many carbohydrates that we are thrown out of fat burning mode or even go into fat storing mode. So in menopause, our tipping point changes. It gets a little bit lower. And so now we have to find that. So the first part of that is assessing, okay, how many grams of carbohydrates do I eat a day? Sometimes diet diaries can help with this. You just jot down what you eat, and then you can literally Google, carb content of XYZ foods that I'm eating. Then you get a general idea of your daily carbohydrate intake, and I have ladies reduce that to start by about 15 to 20%. Okay, so that's going to be, between 20 to 60 grams, depending on how many carbohydrates we have. The other thing that I like to coach ladies on is when you are choosing the foods that you're eating, you want to make sure you know what their dominant macronutrients are. Because a lot of ladies will come in and they'll say, I eat chickpeas, I eat peanut butter, that's my protein. And while it's true that those foods do have protein in them, in the case of chickpeas, the dominant macronutrient is actually carbohydrate. In the case of peanut butter, the dominant macronutrient is actually fat. So having ladies incorporate more dominantly protein-dense foods, more fiber-rich foods, and even more healthy fat-rich foods to reduce and compensate for the reduction in carbohydrates is going to be helpful. Another thing about carbohydrates is sometimes we can change the timing at which we consume them. A lot of time, especially because sleep disruption is very common in menopause, right? I mean, hot flushes, sleep disruption, it's like the number one thing. Women are like, I wouldn't feel so crazy if I could actually sleep at night, right? Yeah. So by moving carbohydrates to the evening meal, this can actually help us go to sleep a little bit better. So that is something else to consider. So to sort of recap that, we want to make sure that we are assessing our levels of current carbohydrate consumption. 2, to compensate for our lower carbohydrate tipping point, we want to reduce those carbohydrates by 15 to 20%. And you want to do this for about 4 to 6 weeks and sort of see how things are going. You want to also pay attention to your macronutrients that you're eating and all of the foods that you're eating and making sure that you're getting enough protein and fiber and healthy fats as well. Mm-hmm. And then there are foods that you can use as what I sort of like think is like filler foods, like lots of cruciferous family of vegetables, like your broccoli, your cauliflower, your kale, your bok choy, Brussels sprouts. These guys all have lots of different types of compounds, phytochemicals, You might have heard of like indole-3 carbinol and DIM and sulfur-containing compounds that help us actually metabolize estrogen appropriately. They also happen to be full of fiber, very low carbohydrate, and make a wonderful addition. So we're going to be reducing carbohydrates, but increasing our other good stuff, including the green leafy vegetables. So that's the way to use nutrition to combat this increased insulin resistance via losing the help of estrogen, right? So that's one part of it. When we are more resistant to insulin, that means we're setting ourselves up for fat gain. If we combine high insulin with high cortisol, then that's like a double whammy punch. And unfortunately, this is exactly what happens in menopause, because not only are we losing the help of estrogen, we are also losing the help of progesterone. Progesterone is the other famous lady hormone. It helps us keep our waist small. It has very strong anti-anxiety benefits, and it also acts biochemically, physiologically, as a buffer or as an antagonist to cortisol. Cortisol is sort of an infamous stress hormone, right? However, if we didn't have cortisol, we would be dead relatively quickly. So it's cortisol, and really all hormones act a lot like people. It sort of depends, how they act sort of depends on who else is around, right? So if cortisol is in high amounts and it's around high insulin, it is going to preferentially strip our muscle off our periphery, off our arms, off our legs, and deposit fat in the middle, which is exactly what happens in perimenopausal and postmenopausal women, at least many of the ones that I have worked with. And this is because we are losing that anti-cortisol effect of progesterone, right? Progesterone can no longer keep our waist nice and slim and trim. So great. So what can we do about this? Well, before I get into what we do about it, the other thing that's interesting about losing progesterone's help, not just in terms of body shape, but also into stress reactivity. So if we have less ability to blunt cortisol's effects, what do we think is going to happen? I mean, are we going to feel more calm, or are we going to feel less calm? We're going to feel less calm. We're going to be more sensitive to stress. We are going to feel stress more stressfully, simply because we lack one of our major tools that we have been dealing with it so far, right? It's like that tool is no longer in the toolbox. And so that means not only does that have implications for our waistline, it also has implications in terms of our ability to handle stress. And in a very real way, our ability to relate to ourselves as we're thinking like, what is wrong with me, and who is this person? I'm like biting my dear husband's head off, or I can't get along with anybody anymore. And also how we relate to others. And in turn, that sets up imbalances in the nervous system, our central nervous system, which unfortunately reinforce that negative stress response, all from the loss of progesterone's help. So it's pretty wild. So in this way, we can actually really use our lifestyle to help to literally self-soothe ourselves, to de-stress. I talk a lot about de-stressing and using different strategies to de-stress. And so where I would begin, my absolute favorite tool is the daily walk. The daily walk, if you can handle it. There is actually a mountain of literature, scientific literature, about the enormous array of health benefits that women get from walking, especially if you can walk outdoors, especially if you can walk somewhere where there's nature, like in a park or in the woods or in an arboretum, or even in a neighborhood that has lots of tree growth and flowers. The Japanese have a neat name for this. They call it Shinrin-yoku. It's translated as forest bathing. And what isn't that fun? Does that sound nice? Don't you want to go have a forest bath? Let's go do that after we wrap this up. It's lovely. It's a beautiful concept. And what it does, beyond just sounding really fun, is it has been shown to buffer the effects of cortisol. It buffers the brain against the more deleterious or negative effects of cortisol. And it's not complicated. Like, you don't have to get like power walking. It's like a stroll. Like you're walking an elderly dog that wants to sniff all the flowers. Like, you are strolling, you're feeling the sun and the air on your skin, you're feeling the heat or the cold on your skin, you're looking at the trees, you're looking at the birds or a car or whatever happens to be in front of you. I call it sense drenching. You're really trying to immerse your senses. You're listening to the birds, you're looking at things, you're feeling things, you're breathing, and when your mind gallops off, like in a net, it's going to, you take a deep breath and you bring it all back. So walking anywhere from, even 7 minutes to 90 minutes plus a day is something that should be built into everybody's life. I like to do it in the morning because it's a great way to start the day. It's very centering, it's very grounding, but I certainly understand that not everyone maybe has the time, just has that time consideration in the morning. So it can be done at any time, a lunch break, in the evening, whenever is going to work best for folks' schedule is when it really should be done. But the daily walk is so powerful, and it helps, again, it just helps center and ground. So that's a big piece. The second piece is creating a shift in the way that we exercise. Most women, when they begin to get stressed out that they're gaining weight, what do? They like jump on the treadmill, or they jump on the elliptical, or they're like, I'm going to go jog for 3 to 5 miles, even if it hurts and I need to wear a knee brace or whatever, I'm going to do it.
Yeah, I've been there.
Oh yes, me too, because I need to do cardio, right, to lose weight. So what I would suggest we do, because this mid-intensity, mid-duration type of aerobic or cardiovascular exercise, like jogging, what this does, if we're doing it for like even more than 20 minutes, is this raises cortisol without any other hormones being raised to offset it. Okay, so it's like when we're jogging for 30 minutes, cortisol rises and it stays high, and there's nothing to blunt that. And then what does that do for this stress reactivity piece? It's not helping it. So what I coach women to do instead is, in addition to the daily walk, that they begin to incorporate more burst or interval type training, or like sprint type training, where if you're on an elliptical bike, you would, increase the resistance for 30 to 60 seconds. You want to be going for that space where you are very breathless, your muscles are burning, you're really hot, that it's really hard. You want to get to that space of almost like you're going to fail. You actually want to get to that space like you're going to fail. If we think about running a 100-yard dash, you can't do that for 30 minutes. You can get like a couple 100-yard dashes in and then you're done because it's hard. Mimicking that type of training not only helps reduce that cortisol response, it also helps raise human growth hormone, which is anti-inflammatory and blunts cortisol, and also testosterone. Now, ladies have testosterone too. Testosterone and progesterone are actually similar in their actions. And I'm not talking about like high testosterone or a testosterone imbalance like PCOS or something like this, but women can use the body's production of testosterone very much like it can use progesterone. So those more in like short duration, higher intensity workouts, interval style workouts help raise testosterone a little bit, help like reduce that waistline. The other thing to do instead of lots and lots of cardio is maybe pick up some weights and do a little bit of resistance training, a little bit of weight training. Not only does that help balance the nervous system, but the muscles act as a huge sink for blood sugar. So this brings us back to our original point too, with the insulin resistance, and will help improve our insulin sensitivity. So I think that weights are magic. I understand that for a lot of women, they might be intimidating, but with the internet now and there's like a never ending shortage of personal trainers and videos and even machines, I think, considering weight training, if folks haven't done that before, especially if their primary mode of exercise is just like jogging or ellipticals or swimming or like this sort of really aerobic cardiovascular based training, that weights, walking, and a little bit of intervals can make a huge, huge difference, just huge. So using our walking to de-stress, using the way we move our bodies to de-stress, hugely, hugely important, just hugely important.
Well, that's
and then other ways.
Empowering information. That's really, really great. Really
good.
Love it.
Good.
And I know we're going to talk more about this. And I also know that you wanted to talk more about the digestive system.
Oh, yes.
I'm really excited about it. I've been taking care of mine, and it's been taking care of me. So.
Yes. No, it's funny how that works, isn't it? It's like if we put just a little bit of attention into something, it will respond and give us those benefits in return. So here is the cool thing about the digestive system relating to menopause, relating to weight gain, sort of this little trifecta. Couple things that are related. So our body uses the gastrointestinal system to detoxify estrogen. So it uses the liver and the large intestine. So estrogen is filtered out of the blood by the liver, and essentially it's sort of packaged up or modified and then sent to the large intestine for us to poop it out. If we are not moving our bowels every day, and we are not pooping out this estrogen, and our stool is just sitting in our intestine, well, that intestine has a blood supply, okay? And so those spent hormones get resorbed back into systemic circulation, where now all the spent estrogen ends up back at the liver. The liver's already dealt with it, and it's dealing with today's stuff, but now it has to deal with that again. And if you're not pooping more than twice a week, well, then it's backing up 3 days, 4 days, even more. The major issue with a lot of the symptoms of menopause in terms of the hot flushes, the heat, these more vasovagal responses, is a fluctuation in estrogen. And when it's going high, it's going low. And so when we are not appropriately eliminating it, that is adding to those peaks and valleys. So constipation, the non-elimination of estrogen, will greatly impact not just these menopausal symptoms, but also fat loss. So constipation is actually an often overlooked and sort of hidden piece of fat loss resistance. Not only do we poop about, 1 to 3 pounds every day, right? So when we're not doing that, you're not it's difficult to actually drop weight. The gut has several sort of tributaries for fat loss, weight loss, including the microbiome, right? The microbiome is the colony of beneficial bacteria that live in our large intestine. And they are doing everything from helping us digest our food, to managing our immune system and talking to our immune system, to even regulating our blood lipids, to even impacting the way that we are feeling mentally and emotionally. So it's enormously important to have a robust, diverse population of gut flora. Your gut flora help you extract calories and nutrients from your food. So when we have a low diversity gut flora, what begins to happen is the ratio of bacteria that sort of promote leanness versus fatness gets skewed towards the fatter side. When we aren't pooping, what happens is the bacterial populations actually self-select for an environment that does better in constipation, which also reduces the diversity. Yeah, it's really, really cool. So staying regular not only helps you with fat loss, not only helps you with estrogen detoxification, but also is a major way to manage microbial diversity to make sure you are maximizing their potential for you promoting your leanness. Mm-hmm. So So we also know, right, that constipation is a major problem in menopausal women. A lot of women will come to me and they'll say, I was totally fine until I began going through perimenopause, and then I began to notice that I can't poop at all. And I also eat tons of fiber because you've been telling me to eat all these vegetables. So I know it's not a fiber issue, so what is going on? So some tips and tricks to help with constipation and alleviating constipation is, first, before even thinking about fiber, unless a woman literally eats very little fiber or no vegetables, probably fiber is not the issue. What I would start with is maintaining excellent hydration. So especially busy ladies, especially women that are teachers or nurses or are in industries like that where they don't get breaks for themselves, they go long periods of time without being able to eat or drink or use the restroom, these ladies are more prone to be constipated, are more prone to have interstitial cystitis, and are more prone to be chronically dehydrated, right? You're nodding. You probably have clients just like I'm describing.
Yes, exactly.
So making it their job to just drink water, and as simple, like it sounds annoyingly simple, right? Oh, drink water. But if your bowel is not appropriately hydrated, it's not going to have the necessary lubrication to have a great bowel movement. It's one of the cornerstones, along with fiber, along with healthy fat, along with electrolytes and, sort of like micronutrition, like minerals that you would get from eating high veggies. These are like foundational aspects of digestive health. The other thing is, if you incorporate the daily walk, it's amazing what that does for the bowel. I say movement equals movement, right? So when we're moving our bodies, it helps our gut move as well. Our organs aren't stuck in place. They're very fluid. They move a lot too. But if we're not moving because we're sitting in front of a computer all day, and then we go home and sit on the couch all evening, and then we go to bed and lay in the bed all day, our organs are not getting a lot of action. So sometimes even incorporating these very gentle movements, a 7-minute walk, can have enormous sort of benefit. So water / hydration, coarse fiber, electrolytes and minerals, movement, these are all really important. If a woman is noticing that she's beginning to suffer from more belching, more gas, maybe more bloating, maybe more foods repeating on her, like a little more indigestion, I often recommend a digestive enzyme. A digestive enzyme that contains the enzymes protease, right? That breaks down proteins, amylase, which breaks down carbohydrates, and lipase, which helps break down fats. This helps you break down all of that excellent food that you're eating, and in turn makes it less gas-causing and less fermentable. Because unfortunately, especially in the perimenopausal era, when our nervous system is changing, having a dip in our body's ability to actually produce those enzymes itself is very, very common. It's typically not forever, like it's often quite transient, but if you have listeners now that are sort of like nodding their heads and like, this is me, taking a digestive enzyme will not only help with like sort of the upper GI effects of like the indigestion and the belching, but also can help promote regularity. They're very inexpensive. They're often like teensy-weensy little things. And unlike something like probiotics, pretty much any enzyme you grab off the shelf is going to do the job and do it well. And unlike probiotics, they are quite inexpensive.
Right.
So speaking of probiotics are the supplemental form of that beneficial bacteria. And there's lots of decent research on them in terms of helping to promote regularity, also helping to reduce anxiety and depression, which is fascinating, and also helping with certain chronic digestive complaints like irritable bowel syndrome, which about 30% of menopausal women experience. So I love probiotics. I often recommend them. If you're going to get a probiotic, you want to make sure that it has been third-party tested. We call this GMP, good manufacturing process. You want to look for that little stamp on the box. Yeah. Some tips that I like with probiotics are you want one that sort of mimics our normal human flora. Mm-hmm. So one that has lots of strains of lactobacillus and bifidobacter. Okay. You want one that has lots of different types of strains, not just one type, like a line. A line has one type and it's a very low dose, and then it has like blue dye in it. So, something like this is not a wonderful option. You want to be mimicking our normal flora, which is a very sort of mixed types of strains. And then I like women to take around 20 billion CFUs. That's called colony forming units. And I tend to like probiotics to be taken just as probiotics. In other words, sometimes I use protein powders, and it's like a protein powder, and it's got enzymes in it, it's got greens in it, it's got, probiotics in it. These tend to create more digestive distress because it's just so many ingredients. It's just trying to be so many things to everybody that I'll usually have folks buy their own probiotic. Does that make sense? And again,
and I wanted to ask you about another probiotic, the vegetables. How do you feel about those?
Yes, I love that. So that was going to be the very last thing that I said, was that fermented vegetables, fermented beverages like kombucha, kefir, water kefir, yogurt and kefir, if you can handle them, right? If you can handle dairy, sauerkraut, kimchi, apple cider vinegar, these are all wonderful sources of probiotics. The fermentation process also introduces like enzymes, a little bit of B vitamins. You've got like some vitamin C in there. You only need little small amounts. So even if people are kind of grossed out by, sauerkraut or kimchi, it's not like they have to eat, they just need like this much, just a very small amount. So I love those. But if they're not doing the job, sometimes we need to up the ante a little bit and get a high therapeutic dose of probiotics on board. I brew my own kombucha. I've been brewing my own kombucha for going on 4 years now. And it's just so fun and so delicious. And I don't know, I love it. But yeah, there's all kinds of ways to bring up our beneficial flora. I mean, just eating a wide variety of vegetables and fruits helps, because what you're doing is by giving them those fibers, they're actually utilizing those fibers as fuel. And they turn those fibers into short-chain fatty acids and other beneficial / anti-inflammatory / health-giving components. So when we're eating, we're not really eating just for us. We're also eating for like our 1 trillion little bacterial friends too.
Yes. Yeah. And with this information, there's just been such a huge wealth of information, Jillian. I really, really appreciate it. So we're armed to really, have more control and our weight loss or whatever else we want to make.
Exactly.
And so I think part of what you and I are both up to, because we talked about it before, is bringing education and awareness to people.
Yes.
To what they can do and what's going on. And
yes.
if you don't know what's going on or what you can do, you're totally at a loss.
Absolutely. When we have a broader picture of actually what's going on, it enables you to like take a direction and take action. When we don't know what's really going on, or when we're just taking random advice from our doctor, I heard this, it's very, very difficult. And it's also very disempowering because we don't know what to do. Like, we just feel like we're floating along helpless. So I think getting that broader perspective with like concrete, like action steps really, really helps.
Yes, and those several things, 4 or 5 things you gave us that are, integral to everyone's good health.
Yes.
We just need to emphasize that and bring those into our lifestyle.
Yes.
It makes such a huge difference.
It certainly does.
Before we go away from this or end this interview, I'd like you to tell us about what your free gift is.
Oh, yes. Okay. So for anybody that's interested, if this has sort of like struck a chord with you and you want to learn more, I have it's either 4 or 5 days of menopause school that is an email-based training system that goes more in depth about these relationships between hormones, these relationships between hormones and the central nervous system, these relationships between the hormones and the gut, and then of course, like what to do about those things. So it's essentially, if we took our talk and made it like a little more in-depth and broad and expansive, a little bit more than what we can do in a 30-minute talk, right? And it feels like a whirlwind tour. So the training goes more in depth into those things. So that's what I'll be offering.
Excellent, excellent, excellent.
Hmm.
Well, thank you so much, Jillian Teta, naturopathic doctor and wealth of empowering information. And we're going to be signing off for now. And so viewers, be sure to check your inbox tomorrow morning for a couple of more interviews.
Thank you so much.
See you then. Bye, Jillian.